What's up guys, it's Dr. Illusion here with another YouTube video from the US Switch server. Today, we're going to be doing something a little different. I'm going to be starting a how-to series, and the first video that you're going to watch now is how to create your own DPS loadout. We're going to be going over tips and tricks and terminology that you might come across, all the things you need to build a good DPS loadout on your own. Let's go. Alright, so let's talk about skill points. So first up, we got the weapon. I only put the one skill point in your innate weapon. For might loadouts, you're not really going to use more than that. In your movement mode tree, put one in your supersonic, whether you're flight, speed, or skimming. I use the whirlwind attack. I don't really like the innate dive bomb one, it gets annoying. And here you see me putting in skill points for breakout, mastery, and restraint and recoveries. These are kind of a luxury if you have the extra skill points. If not, you don't really need to worry about it. For the iconic powers, I put one in the super strength that just kind of helps with like little alerts, like maybe PZ or other things like that. I'm going to use Neo Venom Boost, and then you're going to see me grab Heat Vision and Robot Psychic. I get these for testing. You don't need to put skill points in there, but just in case, like if you need to change a loadout or anything like that, it's good to have those if you have the extra skill points. Alright, now for the actual stat points, you're going to put one into the Focus Superpowered. That gives you 10% might and also extra power regen. We're going to max out our critical attack chance and our critical attack damage. And then we're going to dump everything we have into might and power. That's going to max out the amount of might we can get. And then the rest of the skill points I put into health for survivability. It just helps out. Alright, so next we're going to be talking about augments. So in the augment tab in your inventory, I have 2 might augments in the head. These are your episode augments. We change these out based on what episode we're running. Sometimes different augments give better bonuses for things like survivability and things like that. And then for the origin augs, all of them are red. All of them are might, okay? You don't need to be putting rainbow augs. You don't need extra resto for a might build. You don't need anything like that. They should all be red. They should all be might. Alright, so next we're going to be talking about gear. All your gear should be DPS based. So if you look here at this utility belt, it says required role healer. You don't want any of your gear to say required role and then whatever your role is in your DPS loadouts, because you won't be getting the max amount of might that you could be getting. So just keep note of that. Here I'm running a hand blaster, head, the OP neck. I run this on both my healer and my DPS. The OP back, again, both on my healer and DPS. You got your chest, your legs, your feet, your waist, the OP hands from Save the Universe, shoulders, and the face mask. And then you're running the rings, and then a DPS utility belt, and then the trinkets and pets that go into the utility belt. In your utility belt, you have a couple of choices. Here I'm running the buff trinket. This gives you extra might for 12 seconds. Here I'm running the mother box tier 3. This drops in patchwork Themyscira. It drops on Orion in the rotation of the bounties. It's a great AoE pet. Here I'm running a orbital strike. It doesn't matter which one you use. This one is just Zeus's lightning strike. And then I also have my supply drop. You get your orbital strike and the supply drop from your base in the dispenser. Alright, let's talk allies. They are the new system that the devs introduced into the game. Starting off, they are totally not required by any means. They're just kind of like icing on the cake in terms of your builds. As you can see here, I have 4 allies that are fully leveled up. We have the Batman Who Laughs, Emperor Aquaman, Cyborg, and the House of Legend spot. And each one have their pluses and minuses in terms of whether they're a good combat ally or if they're more suited towards the support roles. So for this build in particular, because I'm using 2 pets, I'm going to be using Emperor Aquaman's second passive, which allows me to get more damage for my pets. The Batman Who Laughs, I'm going to be using his first passive. It's the Luck of the Draw, and we'll kind of call that the meta for support allies. There are 4 different cards that he can pull, each one giving you a different bonus. And then I'm going to be using Cyborg because he's just a really solid AoE combat ally. He's the second best in terms of the DPS output for the allies. And then you see also I have the House of Legends bot leveled up, and he's the best single target combat ally. So I always recommend people, if you're ever going to build an ally, your first one should be the House of Legends bot. You just can't go wrong. Super cheap to build and great DPS output for single target damage. Alright, so next up we're going to be talking about artifacts. I've gone ahead and I've separated all the DPS artifacts that I have in my inventory. Artifacts are game changers. They make or break a build. The last build I had a pet build, and that's why I'm kind of separating those artifacts here. I was using Quizlet, Grim, and Source Shard. I think for this build we're gonna be using the Grim, and I'll talk about PI setups a little later, but we're gonna be using Grim for that one. There was a time once in the game where the Eye of Gemini and the Scrap of the Soul Cloak were the meta. Everybody was running them. It was more of a Supercharge centered build. And you just saw everybody running them before the cards were introduced. And also the Solar Amplifier, one being the highest might giving artifact. A lot of people choose it for their single target builds as well as AoE. I think some electric users might use it for their AoE builds also. I'm not the biggest fan of Lermea's amulet. You just have a lot of people running it. And it could be stressful for your healer sometimes. I haven't been able to get a build that really works with it. Sorcery is a little low on the power cost, so your might, it takes a lot to get the might stacks up. I have Dead King Scepter. You're gonna see a lot of people use it for artifact swapping. It's not as forgiving as it is on the Nintendo Switch. Our lag sometimes cripples us. We can't open our inventory and switch artifacts that fast. So I don't really use it for artifact swapping, but I have it leveled. Alright, and finally we're going to talk about the transformation and the strategist card. The transformation card gives you increased critical chance and critical magnitude. The strategist card puts either a dot or a hot based on when you crit. So for the purpose of this video, I think we're going to be using these three artifacts right here: the transformation, strategist, and the Grim. And you'll see in a second why I choose Grim. We're going to be talking about PIs a little bit later and how that affects your loadout. Alright, let's discuss the difference between damage over time and burst damage. So damage over time is when you cast a power and that one power keeps ticking damage without you having to do anything else. Burst damage is when you cast a power and it just does a big dump of damage in one go. It doesn't keep going afterwards. So here we're going to see some examples of those two. Alright, next up we're going to be talking about power interactions. So if we go into our ability loadouts and we look at Circle of Destruction, you're going to see a bracket that says Power Interaction. Inflicts bad karma, making enemies vulnerable to karmic effects. Okay, and if we look at the next ability, it says Power Interactions. Bad karma affected enemies take additional damage. So what this means is, if you have a PI, power interaction, set up on an enemy, they take more damage with certain powers. So it's really good for you to have something that sets up a PI and then powers that do more damage based on that PI. Okay, so you can go through your abilities and find out which powers set up PIs and which do more damage based on that PI. Alright, each power has a different PI. Some powers share PIs, and some powers, electricity, have two different ones. Alright, so you just gotta read your abilities, figure out which ones work well with others, and test out the loadouts. The great thing about Grim artifact is that Grim will set up a PI for you. So if a move in your ability doesn't do the damage that you were hoping for, you can always use Grim to substitute for your PI. Alright, so we've talked about all the things we needed to talk about. Now actually comes the part of building and testing a loadout. So what you're going to do is you're going to go through your power sets and basically choose a combination that might work best in terms of time it takes to go through a full rotation, the strength of each power, what distance you need to be from your targets, things like that. And you're going to kind of go through, you're going to pick some powers out, and then we're going to test them. And we're actually going to go through how to test your loadouts, what it means to test your loadouts, and what kind of numbers you're looking for when you're testing your loadouts. Alright, so before we actually go into testing our loadouts, we need to set up our parsing chat. So what you're going to do is go to settings, and then you're going to go to gameplay, and the first option, combat parser interval, you're going to make sure that says 10 seconds. Alright, really important that we're testing our loadouts to fit into a 10-second window. That gives us the best data in terms of what our rotation can do. And then next, we're going to go over to chat options. Alright, you're going to add your own chat. I named mine parsers. Alright, then you're going to hover over it, and then you're going to click edit. This window should pop up, and you're going to deselect everything. Alright, and the only thing that you want is damage summary checked. Alright, that's going to tell you all the numbers you need to know about your loadout. So that should be the only one that's checked. So that way you're not getting interrupted by combat logs, messages, things like that. Alright, and then you can go into that chat, and as you see, I have it pulled up right here, and that's going to give you all the numbers you need in a 10-second window to tell you all about your rotation. Alright, so the damage summary tells you how much damage you've done per second, along with the total amount of damage you've done in 10 seconds. It'll tell you the number of hits that you got in that 10-second window. It'll tell you the highest hit you had, and also how many crits you had, along with the crit percentage. And then it'll tell you how many targets that you hit. So now you know if somebody asks you, what are you parsing? The number that you want to give them is the per second damage, whether that's 1.7, 1.8, somebody should know what you're talking about when they ask you that question. Alright, here we go with testing a loadout. So doesn't matter what power you are. Alright, we're going to go into our parser chat, and then because I know sorcery a little bit, this is kind of the first loadout I put together, kind of using Fury with Offering, even though we'll talk a little bit about that a little later. This is more of a melee build with that last ability. So you're just going to see a bunch of sped up footage of me testing these and then looking at the numbers, and we'll kind of talk about how those numbers are affected, especially with Fury. Alright, so after that, looking at my numbers, I'm hitting about 1.4 million, 1.5 million. Here I'm changing out the last power to more of a range kind of thing, so you're going to see me not be so close to the targets, and I want to see how that affects my numbers a little bit. I also forgot that I also changed that first move, Offering. I exchanged it for Circle. So the thing with sorcery is Fury does this massive attack when Fury has a full power bar, and with the sparring targets it's hard to test that because the sparring targets replenish Fury's power automatically. So the numbers are a little skewed when it comes to pets sometimes, so that's just something you need to keep an eye out for. You're gonna see me test this loadout now without Fury, just to see what the base damage is without that massive attack. So you want to make sure that you're covering all your bases, especially with your loadout, without pets and things like that. Alright, so for this next test, I'm actually going to exchange out Circle for Solwell. I want to see if the damage over time is different with Solwell, if it's stronger or weaker than what it would be with Circle. So here's that footage. Alright, so looking at those numbers, I wasn't a big fan of them. So here I'm going back to Circle, and I'm actually going to put in that first melee move, Karmic Backlash, and I'm going to see how those numbers work without Fury. Here we got a 1.4, which is really, really good for AoE. You see I got 93 crits, and that is the strategist and the transformation card working in tandem. The more crits, the higher the damage, obviously. So I'm hitting 1.3 consistently without Fury, which is pretty good for AoE. So that's kind of what you're looking for in your numbers. And here you're actually going to see me now test this loadout with Fury. Again, the numbers are going to be skewed, but just to kind of get an idea of the damage with a pet, and you see the number jumps up to 1.6. Again, because Fury does that big AoE move, these numbers aren't going to be true to what they would be in a real instance, like a raid, because Fury's power doesn't obviously generate that fast. Alright, so next we're going to be talking about supercharges. Alright, so I know typically when we do parsing, we don't use supercharges or buffs or anything for that matter. We just want a clean baseline for our damage, but we need to know what supercharge to use in our loadout. So here we're going to be testing Neo Venom Boost first. Okay, so in a second you're going to see me start a rotation just to get a base number, and then we're going to see how Neo Venom Boost affects that damage. Alright, so for my first parse it was a 1.5, and then after hitting Neo Venom Boost it went up to a 1.8, and then a 2 mil, we broke 2 mil, and then it went back down to the normal 1.4. Alright, so we got 20 seconds of really good damage with the Neo Venom Boost. Alright, so now we're going to test the other supercharges that we have in our ability loadouts, and we're going to test them against Neo Venom Boost to see how they differ in the damage. Obviously we're not going to test the healer supercharges because they're not going to do any damage, but we have, I want to say, three different supercharges to test. Looking at the supercharge cost, Grand Summoning is the only one that is 10,000. You got to be careful with those 10,000 supercharge costs. It takes a lot to generate that supercharge, and if you're not running greens, it could be a little tough to justify that. So here we're going to be testing Polymorph. We're going to go to the other sparring targets. So first we're going to get our baseline damage again, and we got a 1.7. And so now testing with Polymorph, we got a 1.9 and a 1.5. So it looks like we only got 10 seconds of pretty decent damage. I wouldn't pick it over Neo Venom Boost. Alright, so now we're going to test the other 5,000 supercharge. Again, we do our base damage. We got a 1.8 and then a 1.9 with the supercharge, and then went back down to a 1.5. Alright, so again, not really that impressive against Neo Venom Boost. I probably wouldn't choose either of those against Neo Venom Boost. Alright, so last couple things we're going to talk about is where to find tactical mods for your gear, as well as your generator and mods and different things that you're going to find in your base. So in this dispenser here, you're going to find your orbital strikes, your sidekicks, your backup henchmen, and then the tactical mods at the bottom. Alright, these give you little bonuses for weapons and things like that. Alright, over here in your main frame, this is where you upgrade those tactical mods. So you want tactical mod 1, 2, and the boost all active. You're going to need some source marks for this, but you really want those boosts activated, as well as your supply drop, orbital strike, and if you use the backups or sidekicks, go ahead and activate those as well. Alright, so over here in your generator, you're going to find your armory sets and your cells. You want to make sure that your cells are always above 50%, especially if you're running the cyborg ally. He requires that your cells are above 50%. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to get all of these tactical mods, and I'm going to go through the choices with you just to kind of go over what you should be looking for and things like that. Alright, so first up, the weapon tactical mod. We have a couple different choices. Alright, we have absorption adapter, blast adapter, replenishing adapter, and restorative adapter. As a DPS, I recommend either replenishing or blast. Blast more for prec users. Replenishing is just a good all-around one. Absorption is more for tanks, and restorative, you can see some healers using that. But for our purposes, we're going to be doing blast adapter. For your helmet, okay, this is really good for your supercharges. They give back a percentage of your supercharge, so I always recommend whatever supercharge you have in your loadout, that's the one that you should pick, okay? Another choice would be the energized, and that just restores power, but if you're running with a troll or if you have the cyborg, you don't really need it. It's much more beneficial to have the supercharge back. Alright, so because we're using Neo Venom Boost, I'm going to choose Supercharged Neo Venom Boost 3. And that's going to give me 5% back when I use Neo Venom Boost. Alright, for your neck, because we're in a Might DPS, I'm going to choose Escalating Might. The other ones are also based on the different roles, so Replenishing is for trolls, Restoration would be for your healers, Assault and Blocking for the tanks. So here we're going to be choosing Might. Right, for your chest, we have a couple different choices here. Okay, it's always a toss-up with me between Extended Supercharge and Penetrated Strikes, or even Power Efficiency if your power set is really power hungry. Penetrating Strikes, this has been tested. It is the better option than Core Strength. Extended Supercharge gives you even more supercharge back to you when you use it. So depending on the kind of playstyle that you want, if you're using more supercharges, it's always good to get more of those back. Alright, for this purpose we're going to be using Penetrating Strikes. But as you see, I had Extended Supercharge in my chest already. Alright, for the back, depending on what kind of back, because we're in the DLC for it, the OP back is still relevant. If you want to, you can change out the tactical mods based on what role you're in. But because I don't really feel like doing that, I just keep it as the accelerated shield for my healer. These other ones that you see here are more for the tank. Again, we're not going to be using that so much. Alright, in your hands, again, it's an OP item, but even still, we always choose max damage, just for the DPS aspect. Leg mogs always suck, they always will. It doesn't really matter which one you choose, but because I know we're using Soul Barrage in our loadout, I'm going to choose that one. And then for your feet, you got a bunch of different options, but Tumbling Master is kind of the best one. Just gives you this extra roll, as you're going to see here. Really good for dodging attacks, getting out of dangerous pools or anything like that. Just gives you extra movement to separate yourself from those things. Alright, and last up we're going to be talking about generator mods. So in our generator we're going to go to mods. We have all power for the health and power, restoration for our support role, and then because we're might based we're going to choose might, and then for our affinity mods we have might as well, and then the other two are for our healer. Alright guys, there you have it. Everything you need to build a good loadout on your own. Doesn't matter the power that you're using. If you use these tips and tricks, I'm sure you can all build a great loadout and become better DCUO players. Thanks for watching guys. We'll see you in the next video.